Alice Walker is a Black American female writer, perhaps best known for her novel The Colour Purple, for which she won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. In this video, I discuss her short story, Coming Apart, in particular its analysis of the intersection of race and sex, and its conceptual innovation in the form of the concept womanist. Centred on the relationship of a Black husband and wife, the story examines the intersection of race, blackness and whiteness, and sex, manhood and womanhood. One day, the husband returns home from work and immediately proceeds to the bathroom, where he opens a pornographic magazine filled with images of white blondes and strokes his penis. Quote, he's in the bathroom a luxurious 10 minutes. He emerges spent, relaxed, hungry for dinner, unquote. While he has been fantasizing about white blondes, she, his Black wife, has been making his dinner. She finds the magazine in the bathroom and feels invisible, rejected, overlooked. Of course, he tells her that she is being silly, a prude, ridiculous. She agrees and resolves to grow up. The next day, he returns home and proceeds to the bathroom again, though this time with a magazine filled with images of bronze and honey-coloured women. If one feels that this is improvement, this feeling immediately dissolves, for the front cover depicts a brown-skinned woman at the feet of a Black man, so contorted that her head is not visible. Quote, she looks like a human turd at the man's feet, unquote. In the following scene, he is on a business trip in New York and has brought his wife along. Seeing the Black hookers, hair dyed blonde and spaced out, with their Black pimps, he declares, how free everything is, a far cry from Bolton. As he is enjoying these wonders, his wife stops in front of a shop window containing life-size sex dolls, each of a different race. A white one posed for anal inspection, an Oriental with eyes closed and pouting mouth open, an Eskimo woman with fur around her neck, ankles and vagina, and a Black woman dressed in a leopard skin, complete with tail. Interestingly, what the wife finds most disturbing, most nightmarish, is not any of this but something else, that the dolls are smiling. What is most sinister is not that women are pictured as degraded, but that they are pictured as enjoying their degradation. Or perhaps, not that women are degraded, but that women are socialized to enjoy their degradation. And as she stops in front of this window, two pimps ask her if she is working. Her husband sees in this a compliment. His wife is, quote, foxy, unquote. The wife is bombarded by images of women of various skin colours, all degraded, each in a certain way, and that degradation eroticized. Through these images, Alice offers an account of the meaning of womanhood and of the meanings of skin colours as they relate to the meaning of womanhood. Women are, qua women, degraded, and this degradation is eroticized. Skin colour then carves them out as various types of woman, each type to be degraded in a novel and thus exciting way. Alice's analysis of the intersection of race and sex stands in stark contrast to the present practice of intersectionality. Ostensibly, intersectionality is the theorising of the intersection of oppressions. In reality, it is the ranking of women in a hierarchy of oppression. The injunction to be intersectional is the injunction to recognise that white women are privileged relative to non-white women. By contrast, in Alice's analysis, skin colour organises women not vertically but horizontally. Women of all skin colours are displayed in magazines and shop windows in postures of degradation for male sexual pleasure. Alice attends to differences in the depictions of women of different skin colours and sees therein a sameness, a commonality, eroticised degradation. Interestingly, Alice later describes the depiction of Black women in pornography as, quote, qualitatively different from that of the white woman. Where white women are depicted in pornography as objects, Black women are depicted as animals. Where white women are at least depicted as human bodies, if not beings, Black women are depicted as shit, unquote. The claim that the depiction of Black women in pornography is qualitatively different from that of the white woman appears literally correct. Recall that the front cover of the second pornographic magazine depicts a brown-skinned woman curled like a turd at a Black man's feet. But it is nevertheless incongruent with the story thus far, for Alice has portrayed the conditions of women of different skin colours as all of a piece, as qualitatively the same. I am therefore not entirely sure what to make of this claim. Perhaps Alice is drawing our attention first to the sameness of women's condition and then to the differences within that sameness, namely to the difference in the ways that women are degraded, and inviting us to reflect on what this means. The husband, recall, considers the degradation of women freedom. When they return to their hotel room, they watch on TV as two black women sing. The first, wearing a chain around her ankle, sings, "Free me from my freedom, chain me to a tree." The second sings, "Ready, aim, fire, my name is Desire, and shoot me with your love," as guns and rockets fire around her. The husband thinks the first song foolish, but the second revelatory, unable to see that the second song is no less a romanticization of enslavement than the first. The suggestion, I think, is that what men see as enslavement outside the domain of the sexual, they see as freedom inside that domain. Why does a black man, a man whose people have been enslaved, see this sexual enslavement of women, including black women, as freedom? Is it, the narrator asks, because he can now ogle white women in freedom? In other words, does he experience the sexual enslavement of women as freedom because it is his freedom to sexually access white women, a freedom to which he, as a man, is entitled, but of which he, as black, has hitherto been unjustly deprived? In fact, in gaining this freedom, the husband is said to cease to regard himself as black. Perhaps in gaining this freedom, he becomes a fully fledged man, a man who has all of the rights that a man properly has, and in becoming a fully fledged man, ceases to be black in the sense of a lesser man. It seems that sexual access to women is associated not only with manhood, but also by implication with whiteness. Thinking of her mother, the wife resolves to fight. She reads Audre Lorde, then Louisa Teish, then Tracy A. Gardner to her husband. Gardner writes of the lynching of black men and of black women following the Civil War. The husband, quote, "cannot imagine a woman being lynched. He has never even considered the possibility," unquote. Alice continues, "Perhaps this is why the image of a black woman chained and bruised excites rather than horrifies him. I wonder if it is instead the opposite. Men see the degradation of women as sexual and therefore cannot see it as violent. When a woman is lynched, they see sex, not lynching. If this is true, then the degradation of black women is invisible twice over. The degradation on the basis of their womanhood is invisible, and so too is their degradation on the basis of race." The wife's reaction is equally interesting. When she arrives at the sentence, quote, "There were also a number of black women who were lynched," unquote, the narrator says, she reads this sentence quickly and forgets it. Why? It is, the narrator explains, the fact that the lynching of her body has never stopped that forces the wife, for the time being, to blot out the historical record. She is not prepared to connect her own husband with the continuation of that past. Here she describes, or more accurately redescribes, all that we have witnessed, the pornography, the sex dolls, the prostitutes on the street, the pimps asking her if she is working, her husband telling her that this is a compliment, as the lynching of women. She redescribes what for her husband is sex as assault, what for her husband is freedom as enslavement, what for her husband is progression as continuous with the past. I suspect that we shall understand this description as metaphorical, rhetorical, intended to open our eyes to an as yet unnoticed feature of the treatment of women, namely a degrading quality. We shall not understand it as literal. Indeed, we shall recoil from such an understanding, for we shall see it as diminishing the horror of what whites did to blacks. I want to suggest that we shall react thus because we, like the husband in the story, cannot conceive of what is day to day, what is conventionally done to women, the ways in which women are displayed for and devoured by men, as lynching. We share with him a concept of sex that makes the degradation of women intelligible only as sex, and sex only as natural, right, and good. We share with him a concept of sex that disappears the degradation of women as degradation. In describing what is done to women as lynching, Alice invites us to conceive of the at-present inconceivable, to view the present treatment of women from the standpoint of a future in which sex is not a man's conquest of a woman, in which women's degradation is not erotic. To understand her description as metaphorical or rhetorical is to decline this invitation. In this story, Alice introduces the term womanist. She writes, "The wife has never considered herself a feminist, though she is, of course, a womanist. which she proceeds to define as a feminist only more common. As I understand her, she here means something like a lay feminist, a woman who has a feminist sensibility, though she has not studied feminism, though she does not move in explicitly feminist circles, and so forth. It occurs to me that womanist, thus understood, means what Janice Raymond thinks feminist ought to mean, but has not. Janice criticises a feminism that, pursuing the goal of women's equality to men, conceives of women just as men have, in relation to men, arguing that if feminism is to liberate women, it must conceive of women in relation to women. The term womanist does this. It suggests that a feminist is one who is for women. As Alice elaborates, womanist encompasses feminist as it is defined in Webster's, but also means instinctively pro-woman. This meaning is not, however, the only reason for which Alice prefers the term womanist to feminist. She explains that womanist has roots in black women's culture, for she creates it from the word womanish, a word that black mothers use to describe and attempt to inhibit the strong, outspoken or outrageous behaviour of black girls. You're acting womanish. Alice sees black girls' desire to act womanish as the desire to act like their mothers and other women they admired. The term womanist, then, captures women's fondness not only for women, but for mothers in particular. I like this. Because womanist has roots in black women's culture, Alice says, she needn't preface it with the word black, as black is implicit in it, just as, she continues, white women feel no need to preface feminist with white, as feminist is accepted as coming out of white women's culture. If I understand Alice correctly, I'm not entirely sure that I do, I think she is saying that the term feminist is associated with works and practices that form part of white women's culture that have particular meaning to white women, that are those works and practices by which they understand themselves, and that the term feminist is therefore associated with white women's culture. We might worry then that women who are not white, women who do not understand themselves through these works and practices, cannot see themselves as feminists, or worse, feel alienated from feminism. As Helen Hacker observes, women, unlike other minority groups, are dispersed throughout society. That is, women live amongst the dominant group, men, and are in many ways isolated from one another. Given this, it is quite a marvel that women came to see themselves as sharing a condition, and that condition as oppression. Intersectionality, at least as it has come to be practiced, redisperses women. In ranking women in a hierarchy of oppression, it obscures their shared oppression. Alice Walker's analysis of the intersection of race and sex is remarkable in not doing this. Consistent with her womanist principles, she highlights differences in the ways that women of different skin colours are treated, but in doing so she illuminates rather than effaces women's common condition, eroticised degradation.